morning. God's Vineyard. That would be a cool place to visit or to live in. Near the Vineyard of Hashem. So what does that mean? And what am I talking about here? There's an interesting law about people who tend the fields, like in a vineyard. If you're doing when you come upon the vineyard of your friend, you can eat grapes in the vineyard as you wish. So it says your friend. The Rebbe says it's referring to Hashem. That's the Sadeu Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shenikra Re'echel. It's a medrash. Because God He gives the permission for His workers to partake of the grapes there. He has to provide all the needs of the worker, it says. All the needs of man. God has to take care of His worker. So if you're a worker of God, right? He bound Himself an obligation to this relationship whereby, as a friend, okay, but that we work in His field. And we're allowed to partake in that of the grapes, and that includes kol tzar ke'adam, the Rebbe writes, shekulim nikraim b'shem achilo, because that means everything's called eating. Okay, we have a gastrointestic centered world here. It's all about eating. It's consumption. Consumption is a word that means using any resources. Kedei tzarkim, you have to give whatever they need. Both things with regards to things that has to do with your sustenance, being alive, which is what you usually get from a field, including pleasure. That's a need also. The Rebbe includes that. Kol tzar ke'adam includes tainug, haveidas bekerem, specifically alluded to here in this line in the Chumash, in the idea that you're working in a vineyard which is a place where there's grapes, which is intoxicating, or in potentia. Okay, then it tells you to look in the Sikha, I think, that I learned with you yesterday. Okay, but this is in Sefer Sikha Tafshin and Aleph. Okay, it's Parshas Teitzei. I'm in advance because I got to write things about. I have to research things that are going to be more relevant coming up to Rosh Hashanah, and we've got to live with the times. We do have to live in the parsha. For me, that means a few parshas in advance, sometimes unrelated if I'm inspired by something else. So, but both are good. So the whole idea here in learning these laws and saying that determines our relationship with God, because it says, Magid varav li'aykav chukum mishpatav li'Yisrael. God says His words to Yaakov. They're His words, the things that He abides by. His decrees that He, Dvaracha could be referring to Torah. He tells us His Torah, and He does and He gives us His mitzvahs. He gives us His Torah and His mitzvahs because He obligates Himself. They're incumbent upon Himself. That's why it says in the Medrash, Mashu Aisehu Omer Yisrael Ases. That He tells the Jewish people to do what He does already. So therefore, if He's going to tell you that if you have a vineyard and you have workers in the field, you provide all their needs, including all their pleasures. That's why I'm talking about a vineyard. The Rebbe says something incredible here. So, we spoke about this yesterday at some length, but here it's in a different style a little bit. The signal in Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, you should know that the reward for your love is more than wine, right? Pleasing the phrases of your perfumes, your name is like perfume poured out. Beautiful words from Shir Hashirim. Torah is wine? Okay, so it's pleasure, but it's the aspect of Torah that you can appreciate. It's the Taimei Torah, it's the Torah of Mashiach. When you appreciate what you're learning, that's the Tainug in Torah. So here we bring the Pirkei Avos. It says, you should know that the reward for the righteous is in the future to come. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, well, you wouldn't know that if you learned the Chumash, because the Chumash says if you do that, you're going to have the rain in its time. You're going to have the crops are going to be give a good produce, and everything's going to be great for you. You're going to have a geschmack life, and you're going to have a lot of wealth. So the Mishnah actually does have to teach you this. No, the real reward is in the future to come. We spoke about that in terms of Rambam yesterday. He brings it in halacha, in his halacha, in the Hilchos Tshuva, which is also cited here at some length, different parts. The Yesh Leimar Perish B'zeh she'aveda atzma hi meteich hiskashvus hiskabrus. So the Rebbe says, as his innovative thought, that this teaches us, this Mishnah teaches us, that the Aveda itself has to be with Vidashim Antar Matan Scharim Shel Tzadikim. You should know. What do you mean you should know? You could just say Matan Scharim Shel Tzadikim Lasad Lave. You'll know it. Why? Because I just said it, so you know it. Why are you saying Vedah? So the Rebbe is darshaning that this means that the Aveda itself has to be with das. It has to be with Hiskashos Hiskabros, connecting, mindful, being present in what you're doing. That's describing the Aveda, and we're going to see maybe this is connected to the word das, who lashon Hiskashos Hiskabros. And he cites the Tanya, the end of Perek Gimel. That knowledge means Va'adam yada es chavo, right? He knew his wife means he connected. They had a connection. His chabros means to join. What's the Mishnah enjoining us to connect with? What are we supposed to be mindful of in the most tangible way? With the state of the way things are going to be for the tzaddikim in the future to come. Hainu, meaning, shebizman ha'aveda, that when you're exerting yourself in devotion to God, hayayim la'asaysim, which it says in the context of working, or, well, it's talking about Torah in general, that today you should do them, you do the mitzvahs, the macha lekabel scharam, the chachamim darshan, that means tomorrow you're going to get the reward. Today you just do. So that's talking about in the times that we're now having to show our devotion to God. That's today to doing. Something resembling the reward that's going to be in the future to come is available now. That's what you have to be mindful of. That's a way of telling you that whatever you think, the mutton, you would have thought that it's just what the Torah says. You're gonna have a nice produce. You're gonna be, your net worth is gonna be going up every month, from month to month, straight growth. That's what the Torah says you're gonna get. So the Chachamim have to tell us through Big Avos, that this of our fathers, that you should know that the reward for the righteous is really the future to come, because what you get now, as geschmack as it is in this world, is gonna be way better. Okay, you have to believe that, but you have to taste it now, the Rebbe is saying. And then the ability to do that is through das, just being mindful of this idea that Hashem has bound himself in a gift of love and marriage. Amzu kanisa. We are acquired to God in marriage when we receive the Torah. And in this sense, when we're working for him now, he gives us a reward, just like if you're working in the vineyard, you partake of the grapes. With all that comes with, eating it just up on a tree top isn't quite it's ideal. The Rebbe calls it tainug. I think it says Noach planted a vineyard. It didn't say he took his grapes. The vineyard was the wine. Ish tachas gafnai. Everyone's going to be under his vine. That's the expression of, I think they didn't say it about Shlomo Melech's times, but certainly in the times to come, it's going to be peaceful. Like in times of Shlomo, you're going to be able to, each person sit under their vine, by the vineyard, sipping wine. You can make your vineyard with a cottage on it or something. A chalet, I don't know. Make it. How would you do it if you were king? So the Rebbe analyzes this whole idea of why we call it schar. Schar is a term that means you get paid. You have to pay your workers. That's the model here for God's devotion to us. It should be, why doesn't it say like a husband to a wife? In fact, we do say that in a much deeper way in the Sikha that I learned yesterday, spoke about ultimately the relationship of a worker is one of a partnership. So you're the owner. It actually cites that too here in beautiful words. That basically, since you're a chelik avaya, you are a partner in the whole creation. So that has, the idea of partner is something that, I know I spoke about this before, that in Philosophy 101 they asked, they use the word partner, and I thought they were talking about business partner. So it's a word that was just inculcating society at the time. But now it has become a word that means spouse. So here the idea of being a partner to God in Maisa Bereshis is pretty powerful. If we become Amzu Kanisa, the matronissa, is acquired by, it's a dove's, the locking of the dove's eyes. When the female dove gazes at its mate, he will never go to another person. It's like the loon. You're not supposed to call the loon when you're on a canoe trip, because that's going to confuse a loon. If a loon falls in love with your voice, that's it. He'll never marry. So don't mock the loon. Don't mock the loony guy that's making loon calls. Well, no, him you should mock. Don't mock the loon by being the dove. It's dove. Forevermore, you're stuck. You're going to be looking for that song forevermore. Don't trick the loon. Okay, so the Rebbe likens. So there is the idea of partnership. That's the ultimate idea of the way God reciprocates to show love for us. It's a partnership in the sense that each person gets something out of it. The Rebbe, yesterday we looked into that. What God gets is dir b'tachtainim, and the Jew gets his lachzeis b'nayim Hashem. Okay, that's what you get out of the deal. You get to behold your beloved. In this case, it's towards a king. King is in the field, right? So here we're talking about working in a field. But the Rebbe compares this to a different type of ischayvus, a different type of obligation, incumbency of a slave to a master. We're also called slaves to God. Right? Where's the verse? Okay. Mashenke Evid, Shekanui la Rabbi, Bechayev l'shamas es Rabbi leishayach skar. There's no concept of giving reward or compensation for a slave. He's your property. Would you compensate your horse? No. You feed it, you take care of it because it's your property. You care for your servants. You care for people in your household. You care for your slave. It says if you get a slave, you've acquired for yourself a master. You have an obligation now. It's an extension of you, a part of you that you have to take care of. In fact, if you harm it, you have to let it go. Since the Jewish people are like slaves to God in the sense that they have to serve God, they're obligated, gamadin eved, as also the laws pertaining to a slave. The verse says in Bahar, in the Chumash, it says, the Jewish people are my servants, my slaves, avadim. The word in Hebrew can be used, usually means slave, actually, not servant. In English, we don't like to say the word slave. Va'ed yeser mechuyev de eved, dekevan da'ani lai nivresi ele shamash eskaini. So the slave is actually more obligated to serve his master than a worker is incumbent to serve his employer. Sorry. The kaven sha'ani le'nivresi l'shamash eskaini. I was only created to serve, to minister my maker. That's the Mishnah. Okay, in Seder Kedushin. Sefer Kedushin. Okay. So in what sense do you get a schar, a reward, a payment, insofar as you are a slave to God? So the Rebbe derives from this that the model for our schar, It's because we're talking about here this mission that says you should know that the reward, the schar of the tzaddikim is the future to come. So we have this God obligated himself to give reward, and that's what we call the world to come. Okay, we say we have something resembles that now. We have the ability to tap into that now, the Rebbe said over here, but ultimately the completest expression of that will be in the future to come. So the model to express that reward is not one of avdus, of servitude to God. That maybe has different connotations. But in this sense, when we talk about a reward, it has to do with your willful incumbents or contract, not contractual, but even a partnership. So you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And what do you get out of it? You get to gaze upon God. Okay? That's what you get out of the deal. You get it to be in a relationship with God. That's a pretty good bargain, right? What's it? Kaina mistay Ephraim. We learn out the whole idea of that you could acquire a wife in an acquisition. Kinyan mistay Ephraim with stay Ephraim when Avram Avinu bought the field for Maras Machpelah from Ephraim, Achiti, right? It says he acquired it from him, and we also have the term of acquiring when you acquire a wife. So from here we learn that just like Avram thought that he was getting the best side of the bargain, even though he's paying like zillions of dollars, and the other guy thought, this Ephron thought he was getting the best deal, that's the way you should look at marriage. This is why Jacobson's for it. But he's saying it from someone else, I think. I don't know where it comes from. So yeah, we learn it specifically from there to show that we learned it from Avram's thinking he got the best side of the deal. That's a bargain. So each person in the shutfus, this partnership, you and God, or in marriage also, it's the idea, because we learn marriage from this acquisition of a field, so you acquire. So just like everyone's talking, they got the best side of the bargain. It's the ultimate bargain. So it's not in that sense, it's a partnership. It's higher than a reward for compensation for service, and it's certainly higher than a slave who's incumbent. It becomes, you're my property. So that's not the ultimate expression of schar. Schar is when you willingly do something, and he likens it to a preemptive war. It's called milchemes reshus. So when you're obligated to serve, that's not, then you wouldn't talk about a reward. So it's a different conversation. It's only a reward when you say, you know what, I want to go into this partnership. It's not, then it's it's only when you decide, then you can get paid. Your soldiers go out to war. Okay, here we're mixing the two ideas, because we're talking about milchemes reshus. Here in this context, you're going to see that it's speaking about a spiritual battle that you go out. It says, when you go out, kiseitze. It's talking about milchemes reshus. Rashi says it's talking when you go out to wage war on your enemy. It's talking about you decided. I don't know if that's called a preemptive war, but you decided. It wasn't something that God said you have to do. This is the land I'm giving you. You have to conquer that land. No, it's when you either want to expand your boundaries because you just need more space. So then you make a sovereign declaration of war, or when you want to increase God's glory in the world. It hasn't been done. We haven't been like very proactive in that area, right? We're not that. We don't want to just conquer the world that way anymore. It's not an expression of who we are. It's part of our modern interpretation of these laws. It's nothing to do with that. Something that, Mashiach is going to wage the wars and the wars of Hashem, as Rambam writes. And the Rebbe says it could be peaceful wars. It doesn't have to be Armageddon. The Rebbe has a way to explain that with the prophecies of Armageddon, right? In the Chumash itself. We spoke about that in other cases. So it's only when you're in a relationship of, I want to get into this partnership, that you can talk about, or you want to work the fields of God. So you can, and then God gives a schar for that, but the schar is not something you get only after. You're going to get the reward tomorrow. You pay your worker like on a daily basis. He works, then you pay. So there's an aspect of paying also in advance, because you have to make sure that the person's fit to work, so you take care of your workers. And that's part in this partnership also. If God gives you the vineyard to work, it's his vineyard, it's his asset, but you're going to be working in it. And part of your contribution is, or his contribution rather, is reflected in his ability for you to partake of the grapes and enjoy them, and to nourish you while you're doing the work, because he has to make sure you have all your needs taken care of, including your pleasures. Okay, so it goes on at great length and speaks about how we're partners in creation. Okay, it gets really intense. But I think I'm going to stop there. It's getting late. Oh, it says just one other thing. It says very interestingly, and I don't really understand this. It says when you go out to war on your enemies, we learn the whole concept here, and we're applying it from, or it applies in the sense that it's Milchemas Reshus. When you go out to wage war on your enemy, Rashi interprets you chose to go to war. You didn't have to. You weren't told to. It wasn't a defensive war. It's a preemptive war. So in that sense, we get this idea of the type of servitude we have to Hashem that's defined more as as someone who chooses to work, not when you are obligated to take care of your slave because he's your acquisition. That's not the model for our service to God, and therefore not the schar. I mean, it is a model in the sense of just servitude and devotion to God, but in the context of schar, that's not how we understand it. That's not the model for us understanding God's devotion to the Jewish people by saying he's going to give us schar. It has to be one of reshus, something that we choose to do, rather than we're obligated. So it's more like a hired worker or someone who works a vineyard. And yesterday we used the model of an chicken husbandry guy. Good, chill. Okay. So that has to do with warfare in the sense of going out upon our enemy. So I wanted to speak about. It says going out to war is the tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means God's concealment. It says Reimez Gamal Tzimtzum Shehu Kemayim Milachama Kaviyachal Tzamtzem Esaer. It's a war to God, for God to conceal his divine expression of infinity. To contain that God's everything, that requires a war. So a war is descriptive of tzimtzum, is concealment. Especially when we're talking about his first making a vacuum space to allow for creation. It's called a siluk. He removed his light completely and left makam chalol, a vacuous space. And that's usually seen as an igel, as a circle, a sphere. But the Rebbe says here, no, even higher. If this includes, when we talk about going out to war, that God sends us out from the highest places in order to go into this world where God's concealed, that's considered a war. When you go out to wage war on your enemies. So it says there's two levels of the first symptom, the first time that God removed his lights. And the most essential, one's described as a sphere made of vacuous space. But there's another one here that I thought was fascinating. I don't know what it means. I looked up the source. I still don't know what it means. It didn't say anything more than it says here, basically. It says this, so we're referring here also to the more primordial tzimtzum that is not a sphere, it's a cube. Shehu meruba, the light igel. Kedeisa b'sifrei Kabbalah, as works of Kabbalah express. Shehu ve'umuva le'itim nediras b'drushei chassidus. Sometimes this is appear, I don't know what nediras means, in the teachings of Chassidus. And he gives you a source, which I looked up. It said nothing there. So look that up in Kabbalah. There's no sources in Kabbalah to find that in this footnote. So there's ultimately a cube, which makes more sense to me in some ways because there's like a logic in creation. Isn't that the whole idea of... And logic is more defined by a cube than a sphere. A sphere is a more natural... Like a drop of water just naturally forms into a sphere, but nothing forms naturally into a square. So a square seems to be more the model in this sense of creation. And so ultimately we see that the first symptom was a cube. It's logical design by nature. It's not organic. You have to say, I'm going to put laws into motion that is beyond nature. In this sense, I'm using the idea of intellect as being beyond intellect or beyond nature. That didn't make much sense, but maybe there's an aspect to intellect, the chokhmah, that sort of transcends intellect itself. Intellect's more associated with bina. Bina is after you expand out that seminal point of intelligence. When it expands out, then it's palpable and it's communicable, and even to yourself in this case, not outwardly. Okay, so that was a massive topic, and it was pretty hard, so I don't know. I hope that everyone kept up with it, and especially me, because if I didn't keep up with it, then I just led you astray. Chas v'shalom. So have a great day, everyone. What is it, Labor Day here in Canada? I don't know what America. I'm not worldly enough to figure that one out. But I learned that it is Labor Day in Canada, so I'm with the program there. So everyone, have a wonderful day. Lots of brachas and joy. Serve Hashem with joy and see everything being blazed, your whole path blazed before you, because God has to provide all your needs, including pleasure. It has to be a pleasurable experience, just seeing this path blazed out before you, just to go in this walk with God.